I've got a great guest joining the Future Forecast podcast with me tonight. Quite the rock star in both the music world and the remote viewing world. I'm going to go through his bio in just a minute, but let me bring on Josh Maitland of Rockstar RV. Josh, how are you, my friend?
Dennis, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into our discussion. You're a teacher of remote viewing, of intuition. You've got a musical background. I'm going to read your bio real quick. Well, the bullet points that I took. So please correct me if I'm wrong and fill in any blanks
Sounds good,
that I
man.
miss here. But I was thinking about this tonight. Like I'm not good at memorizing stuff, so I write everything down on a notepad. And when I do a regular podcast, nobody can see like me not looking at the camera, right? And then you always look off camera to read stuff. Real professional here, right? But I'm going
That's
to
all
read
good.
from. These are my tricks that I'm sharing with everybody out there. But Josh is with he's a Rockstar Intuition teacher. He's a musician. He worked with artists and producers from all around the world. He has 7+ albums with his own bands. And he's always been a seeker of deep truths since, quote this, memorizing Ghostbusters at 5 years old. Do you still remember the whole movie?
I mean, it's all in there. I can scroll through it and stuff. But yeah, I used to like recite it to other kids on the bus, and the
Oh,
older
that's
kids
great.
they thought I was weird as hell, but I enjoyed the attention, I guess.
Yeah, but look at you now, right? Just stepping into your own. That was me with Goonies. I had
Oh,
Goonies
nice.
memorized beginning to end. I still could
Yeah,
probably get through most of it. Ghostbusters is a good movie,
classic.
though. Really good movie. Let's see. He studied meditation, near-death experiences, and then consciousness phenomena, which many of us listening have been on this journey. Then he learned RV during the pandemic, which it sounds like it helped tie everything together for him. It connected those dots, and he's now teaching intuition. Josh, that's fascinating. I think a lot of us out there can relate to that journey of just feeling something's different in this world, something's different about our perception of it, and then trying to explore and figure out like what does it all mean?
Yeah.
What a wild ride it's been. Any blanks that I missed there that you want to fill in for us?
Not really, no. I've got a background in civil engineering as well, water
Hmm.
resource environmental
Oh wow.
specialization, so that keeps me busy a lot of the time too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting jump to go from, the very analytical scientific world of engineering into the kind of woo-woo world of remote viewing and consciousness stuff. But
Yeah.
it was a natural fit because I've always done music too, so music's always been a kind of a woo-woo thing a little bit too. So
I think
yeah,
I think so too. And I think we're going to talk about, the creative side of that as well as we go through this conversation tonight. And I think the civil engineering side, the scientific mind, I think probably helps you, right? To have that other side of your brain. I mean, if you're all one-sided with just the creative, with just the psychic stuff, you don't have that balance, I think. And now you've got both, so you can apply the science to the woo, and I think that gives you a good, well-rounded outlook on
yeah.
things.
Yeah, and I mean, like knowing a little bit about physics and in particular the physics of sound and vibration,
Hmm.
just from being a studio engineer as well for many years.
Right.
Uh, I've talked to other engineers slash remote viewers. There actually are a few of us out there,
Yeah.
and they've got kind of the same opinion that it was almost like it primed you for remote viewing to just do that process of diving into sound frequencies and manipulating them and tweaking them to turn into something more enjoyable for the person at the end of the line listening to it.
I think it's neat when you have these different, like I come from, with an analytical background and an intelligence background,
Yeah,
and that helps me in my process as I'm going through. And then also being a writer, I think that helps with my remote viewing
yeah,
process. It's neat the perspectives we get based on the experiences we have out there in the real world too. That's pretty cool.
yeah, 100%. Like that's one thing that always blows my mind with remote viewing. Like every session I do, it's obviously filtered through my lens, and like when I
Right.
look at other people's work, like your work or Daz or any of the others, like it's like you see their own kind of personal style coming through. Like
Yeah.
it's funny to watch different remote viewers because it's very similar, I find, to like watching different musicians who have their own kind of artistic style and
Hmm.
and what they put into their craft kind of thing.
You really start to notice it, I think, after you've been doing it for a little bit.
Hmm.
I guess the spin that they have on it, almost like their signature, their tone through a session, which is always neat
Yeah.
to recognize what we bring to it. I definitely see it in my own voice, and it's neat too because I see from some of my role models and teachers like Edward or Dick or Daz and Naeem, when I'm going through a session, I'll go into a flow sometimes and I'll take over, like I'll hear their voice in my head as I'm writing something, catching their
Oh wow.
influence coming in on me. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Not that they're channeling information, just I work with them so much and I
No,
see
you're
their
just
their
vibing.
process. Yeah, and when I'll go in, I'll that's what's neat. And that Daz kind of teaches that with his flow. Kind of go where your intuition leads you. And I've had the privilege
Hmm.
of to sit at the big kids table for the last few years and
Yeah,
just
man.
watch how they do it. I'm not doing it the way they do it, but when I go into my sessions, I say, "Oh, Dick did this way," and I like that. I'm going to try that. Never does it this way, and I can pull those pieces, and it's been a really neat experience to go through it that way.
Yeah, it's funny because it's so similar with musicians too. Like, there's been so many instances of just like absolute just telepathic stuff with the band, like when
Yeah,
we're in the studio or just jamming or whatever. I remember one time we're trying to record something, and I heard like the snare drum buzzing in the background from like a resonant, from the notes and somebody not flicking it off. And I was like, oh,
right.
I thought in my head, turn that off, and my drummer walked over and turned it off
They
without
turn it
me
right
actually
off.
saying anything. So
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, just little stuff like that all the
that's
time,
cool
man.
when you work so closely with the group, how everybody kind of gets in sync with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know.
totally. It's cool. Like I've never had a remote viewing band like that, just like I've
Yeah,
done it in music world, but I haven't done it in remote viewing world yet, really. I've done a few like group projects and things like that, but not a lot of kind of detailed stuff like you guys with the core group and
yeah,
the regularity of it and everything. But yeah, it
yeah.
must be
It's
fun.
It is. It's cool. Seeing that synchronicity, the division of work, division of effort between everybody, where everyone brings back a different piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I was finding when I was doing the debriefs, even though I wasn't viewing, some of what I was bringing to it, some of the analysis I was putting through, and just our discussions ended up being relevant to, so everybody had kind of a piece because we were all in sync with things,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was a really neat process. And I find that in my regular everyday life too. People that I work closely with very closely with through a lot of, I deal with a lot of trauma and crisis at the school I work with.
Hmm.
Just the nature of dealing with children, they're emotional beings.
For
And the
sure.
people I work closely with, we get to that point where we're reading each other's thoughts and anticipating each other's movements. And the same thing in law enforcement too. So it's neat
Oh,
when you can
yeah, no doubt.
harmonize with people like that. It's a really
Yeah.
neat experience.
I see that in engineering too, actually.
Yeah.
Especially, working on big projects and group presentations and things like that a lot. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's neat. I mean, I think any kind of interaction with other people is like a psychic process.
Yeah.
I think we don't really think of it that way necessarily because it's just like a normal thing, but
Hmm.
it always turns on, and like we're so connected to everybody, right? Like it's not as much in the modern world perhaps as maybe we used to be, at least not through physical distance as often, but it's there's so many interesting kind of corollaries that I just keep finding. It just remote viewing has just kind of opened up life in a way that's really fascinating. It's just caused me to almost rethink everything a little bit.
Yeah,
But
it's neat when you have that epiphany moment, the paradigm shift, which I think on this journey we go through that many times. It's not just that one and done. It's
mhm.
like, oh yeah, I figured it out, and then it's like, oh no, that just made my world crash again. And you go through that every few. The more you keep exploring, the more you have those moments.
Yeah.
But it sounds like RV really opened things up for you back at the you were saying during the pandemic you learned it. And before we dive into that though, do you want to just give your website a plug early on in the shows? People don't have to wait all
Yeah,
the way to the
sure.
end to hear.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've recently begun teaching intuition and remote viewing on my website, rockstarintuition.com.
Hmm.
And I've actually got like a free course on there that's like 45 minutes or something, kind of teaches you the basics. And I'd actually love to hear what people think of that freebie course, just because I want to make sure it's actually helping people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the more people I can get to try it out, the better. And there's a paid version if you dig it and you want to go deeper.
What does
So
that entail teaching intuition? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
yeah,
Just an
I
overview.
mean, I kind of go into the science of intuition a bit, and it goes into intuition is something we all have, right? It's
Right.
like the experiences we all have before we got into remote viewing and stuff, like thinking of somebody 2 minutes later they text you, that kind of little
Hmm.
stuff,
Right.
and just kind of following your intuitive system, which is the heart brain gut pathway,
Hmm.
and learning, it's learning to trust your hits. Remote viewing is probably the best tool I've found to
Yeah.
work intuition. It's almost like a gym for your intuition because you're
Hmm.
you're you're testing out all the different clairs, like your clairvoyance, clairaudience, like seeing,
Yeah.
hearing, but also the taste, the clairgustance, I think that one's called.
Yeah.
And
That's a weird one.
just the somatic stuff, like feeling stuff in your chakras, energy centers, whatever
Hmm.
whatever you call them, and turning that emotional energy into something on paper, and then of course decoding it through the taking the symbols you get, the AOLs and things, and
Right.
trying to figure out, okay, well, what does this actually mean? What is my subconscious trying to actually tell me
Hmm.
here? Because yeah, really, really, at the end of the day, your intuition is just your subconscious and your energy systems trying to convey information to you. and
Yeah.
and the more often you exercise it, just like a physical muscle, it's like a spiritual muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it becomes, and the better it's going to serve you in your like day-to-day life. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know, I've had a very monk-like approach to remote viewing lately. In that sense, it's like trying to make sure I'm getting my reps in and all that kind of thing.
Well, I think that there's a lot of validity to that. When I was writing my Food for the Archons book, I was trying to figure out like, am I crazy or is this real? And the more I dig in, like, oh no, this is real, and there's stuff behind it. But one of the sources I referenced was, if you ever read Whitley Strieber's book, Master of the Key, or the Key, I forget what it's called. Um, but he had a strange visitor come to him in the night. He never figured out who
Mm.
this guy was, but he had all this crazy esoteric and futuristic knowledge and stuff. And one of the things he said was, he says, we have an electromagnetic sense organ, like a sixth sense organ,
Mm.
that rests in superposition just above the skin. And that's the mechanism by which allowing us to have all this psychic communication and psychic contact.
Interesting.
And that
Oh,
can be strengthened with practice. And then so I'm going through and I'm looking at that. I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. And then I come across, the Heart Math Institute stuff with the
yeah.
electromagnetic heart. And it's like, wow, that ties into what this guy was saying, but this guy was saying it before
Yeah,
heart math
cool.
was a thing. So it's really neat. And then as you say, and then you look at the research coming out of SRI back in the day, the more you practice it, the stronger it gets. It is a muscle. We
Yeah.
can tune it in, really talking about frequency and harmonics and all that stuff. It really is a muscle to flex, and I think you're definitely on the right track, and your course
that
sounds pretty awesome.
that superposition thing is kind of blowing my mind. That's really cool.
Yeah,
I'm just getting
yeah,
like visuals of it now. That's rad.
yeah.
I'd never heard that one
I
before.
remember when I was writing that book, I was so just down, and then as I'm coming into stuff like this, it's like, oh my gosh, this is real. I'm not crazy, and there's like these awesome things that we can do, and there's
Yeah.
really empowering moments coming across that.
And it's
It's
like
just
it's so
people sharing
simple.
those little things. Yeah,
It's like
there we go.
it's not even a hard thing to do. It's just like calm yourself down, get into a
Right.
flow state, and
Yeah.
let stuff come to you. And it's like it's just I tell people remote viewing is just like an active meditation.
Yeah.
Because when I first tried learning meditation, I sucked at it so bad, and
I
I
think
was
we all
just
did.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, I can't stop my thoughts, I can't turn off
Right.
my brain. But like with remote viewing, that's not the point of it. You're trying to actually
Right.
capture that stuff. So I found that a lot easier. But
Yeah.
then once I did a bunch of remote viewing, it was like I went back to try meditating again. It was like, oh wow, this is so much easier now.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know,
got
it just
better.
fixed it.
Yeah, my remote viewing made me a better meditator, and then I also do things like yoga,
Oh
and
yeah,
just focusing on the
nice.
breath allowed me to just have a calmer state and a better endurance when I go through a meditation. And there's times you meditate and you're like, okay, 10 minutes go by and like my timer will go off, whatever. And it's like, wow, you open your eyes, like I was somewhere else, and that was a pretty neat experience. And I had thoughts throughout it, but you can tell your mind was definitely off
Yeah.
in somewhere land.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of the gateway tapes and stuff, so I've
Okay.
gone to some interesting depths and things, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's good stuff. I understand why people say that meditation is kind of like the best thing you can do to support your remote viewing. Like that makes
Yeah.
total sense. Like it
Yeah.
just that calming the mind and being able
Hmm.
to, it's really back to just the intuition thing. It's getting in tune with your own subconscious and your own
Yeah.
intuitive flow, and trusting it's probably the hardest part.
It is. And the best way to do that is by putting it out there and
Practice.
making those
Yeah.
mistakes, getting that feedback, right? You
Yeah.
get the good feedback, like, oh, that worked. You get the feedback where you were off. That's still good data. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
that was my imagination. That's what imagination feels like. You just got to swallow that and have that humility and
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm going to be wrong sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I try to use examples of like mistakes I've made in the course
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
to help people not make them themselves.
Yeah. That's
But if
great.
that's what I've learned the most from is like when I screw something up. Like
Yeah.
it's
That's
the biggest one almost always is my ego really wanting to be right or
yes.
something like that or being competitive about like ARV like oh I want to hit 80% and then I will
Yeah.
but then it'll drop to 60
Yeah. Then you get
shortly
humbled
I'll
real
get like
quick,
8
right?
in a row wrong after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just coming out of a slump right now where I couldn't hit anything for three or four different targets. So
Hmm.
I'm working through that, but it's tough when you go through that. But it's good too to keep you humbled and to bring you because then
Oh
that forces
totally.
me to come back to the basics, right? Because sometimes
Hmm.
I get too prima donna sometimes, like, oh, I'm gonna really pull out and it's like I'm just telling a story right now. It has nothing to do with the
Yeah,
target
yeah.
whatsoever, you know.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm of the opinion that like most intuitive data is correct, and
Hmm.
if you dig deep enough into any impression, like it'll
Yeah,
eventually reveal what its meaning is. But it is
yeah,
really easy to get lost on the wrong thing. Like,
yeah.
I did a session the other day that was like, the target was a photo target and it was a flower. We might go into this one later actually because it's a cool target. It's got a bunch of
Cool.
neat stuff. But I got a sailboat and I got stuck on that. And there actually was a sailboat involved, but that was trying to tell me that the flower was kind of this silky thing or whatever. So,
Mm,
um,
yeah,
but anyways, yeah, it's easy to get stuff can mean more than one thing too when it comes
yeah,
through, right? Like there's piggybacking. I
yeah,
always say intuitive information is always super efficient. Um,
yeah.
in that way. Your subconscious will always give you like the most efficient thing it can to represent your
Hmm.
target. Almost like for me at least, especially right at the start, like after that first video, it's something in that ballpark almost every time.
Yeah.
And it's whether I lean into that or I fall into a trap right after that. That kind of determines where it goes from there a lot of the time.
Yeah, and that's the challenge sometimes, right? But yeah, Dick's always saying, reduce it to its basic gestalts, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you may have this tall, pointy thing. You'll say, oh, it's the Eiffel Tower, and it might be, the Louvre, or it might be, something else that has that similar shape. When you reduce it down, you're getting good data out of it. Your mind's just giving it the wrong label sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's where we get stuck in those AOLs. I'm curious what kind of RV did you start with? What did you learn during the pandemic?
I was a TRV baby. I
Okay.
learned the Ed Dames method,
Right.
and yeah, it's TRV was really good for me. Like I found the right teacher at the right time,
Yeah.
teaching the right stuff because it's super analytical,
Right.
and it just I followed the structures and it worked and like almost immediately. I think my first
Yeah.
session was kind of whack, but the second one was bang on, and I was just like, whoa.
It blows your
So
mind. Yeah.
yeah, and then at the end of that, I did a bunch of future forecasting type training, which
Hmm.
was trying to pick what the top story in the news would be in my
Yeah.
local news the next
Right.
day,
Yeah.
and specifically the photo from that. So for a
Right.
bunch of days, it was just like COVID and doctors and crap like that,
Right.
and then eventually it started kind of morphing, and it would just be like, oh, it's the top story on my wife's feed today,
Oh
or the top
yeah.
story on my feed today, or some, like
Right.
always still the same publication, but it would be
Yeah.
somewhere different, and it was almost like my subconscious was like, I'm getting bored of this target, so I'm just going to
Yeah.
kick you the most relevant, cool story that you'll find interesting, and
That's
so that's
cool.
what I would end up picking up after two or three of them, I think.
Yeah.
And it was cool training too, because it kind of helped me break through that whole time thing of like, oh wow, I can actually see the future with this stuff,
Right.
and it
Right.
kind of got that one out of the way early for me.
Yeah,
But
and it's a lot to process. I actually stepped out of doing the world events for a while because it was I mean, at the
I
time it was
haven't
a
done
lot of
one
heavy
since
stuff too.
October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a little bit since I've done it because then I would focus on it, and then that's
Yeah.
like if it was something dark or scary, and then I'm looking for it, and then I'm preparing for it. It's like I can't do that. But it's a neat, so I try to design when I would do a future target, design it in a way where it's like I'm not gonna look for the big boom scary stuff that's gonna ruin my life for the next month. I'm gonna see what
Yeah.
else I can find out there in the future.
I had a session I did a while back where it was just a monthly news thing, and I was like, okay, did my process, and of course it was
Hmm.
nuclear stuff and Russia and war and whatever.
Right,
So and it ended up being actually a boat, like some Russian nuclear powered destroyer or something was being
right,
launched or something like that. So
yeah,
anyway, I got like 3 pages into it, and I'm like, this sucks. I want something else. Move to a target that isn't war.
right,
And
right,
then I just kind of let it happen and saw what I
right,
got, and I ended up getting all this stuff about like animals in a cage and something about a volcano, and I was like, ah, more doom and gloom. So
right.
I kind of set it aside and gave up. And then the next day I came home, and my wife and kids had this little aquarium out on the porch. And in the aquarium was a volcano, a little fake volcano, and they had a mouse in the cage like that they'd
Oh
caught,
wow.
and he was running
Yeah.
around in this little thing. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And I
That's
look back
cool
at
when
the
you get that
ideograms,
stuff.
and it's like I'd drawn the mice. So I ended up
Yeah.
just going to the most local news possible, I guess, the news about my own house. So anyway, that was one of those experiences that was like, oh, holy
Yeah.
cow. Like just I gave up and just and gave in and was like, all right, universe, send me some stuff. And it gave
Yeah.
me just this beautiful thing that was
That's cool.
super relevant and made me feel good instead of feeling all scared about war and crap. So anyway, yeah.
Do you do any type of do you task yourself a certain way when you're doing something like that?
I've tried a bunch of different stuff. So Um, I if I'm doing like a monthly news, I have like a tasking that I do that's it's pretty much based on the TRV. Like, so it would be top news, my local paper tomorrow, and I'd separate them
Right.
with slashes, like kind of the almost entering data into a
Like in a
program
computer.
type
Yeah.
style. I do kind of see a lot of how this works in kind of programming-y kind of terms. Like
Right.
I really like the holographic universe theory as like the overarching explanation for why all this stuff works.
Yeah.
So I tend to lean towards some of the more computer nerdy stuff in some ways. Certainly tasking, I like doing that way.
Yeah, no, that I think of it, and I haven't made up my mind on what this is, but I'm certainly very interested in the simulation argument. I've
Yeah.
studied that and read a lot about that, but I do see a lot of comparisons to some of the remote viewing that I watch. Not even my own sessions, just watching the other people. It's almost like they're querying a database as they're
Yeah.
going through that
Like
process, right?
Akashic
And
records or that
yeah,
kind of idea.
whatever it is, it's some kind of and I don't have a decision on are we actually going there or are we tapping into a record of it? I don't know at this point in time, but from what I see sometimes it's like they're pulling out data from some massive database that can be experiential in some situations.
Yeah.
Whether we're there or not, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. I think I wonder if it's, you know, more a matter of like there is no time and there's just the eternal now, and
Yeah,
the unity consciousness idea of like, you know, within you the entire universe is folded and all that kind of thing, right? Like it
yeah.
the information is us kind of vibe. Now
Uh-huh.
I'm getting really trippy on you, but
No, no, I'm
that that
following you.
that idea is has a lot of weight for me too, because it just makes a lot of sense if
Right.
let's assume everything is unity consciousness, and all we see in the physical world is just a projection of the
Hmm.
simulation of this unity consciousness exploring itself. It would make sense that if every part of that hologram contains the whole within it, that
Right.
as a part of that hologram I can access the whole through myself, through our
Yes.
superconductive magneto layer or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of the Gnostic texts, right? They talked about the aeons,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not sure if you're
yeah,
familiar with the Gnostics, but
a
the
little bit.
aeons, and then they had these aeonic copies and copies of copies, and so basically, an aeon was a universe, and it was an intelligent universe, and it had a universe within a universe within a universe, and all the way down.
Yeah.
And the further you got away from, I think they called it the pleroma, which is the source, the more degraded your copy is because it's not
Oh yeah.
copying everything. And then I'm studying this, and then I'm going back to the Bible, and Jesus said something along the lines of, the fa I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. So if he's a direct copy of God, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
be religious here, but
No, that's
speaking
right.
through religious terms,
Yeah.
if he's a direct copy of God, so God will be in him, but he also exists within the universe of God. I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
so much sense if it's this big AI copy or whatever. And then
Yeah.
he even says the way to get to, I'm butchering it here, but the way to get to heaven is through me, right? He's the last step you have to go through. So if you're rising through all those levels of reality, the last reality you have to go through before you get to the source would be through Christ consciousness,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty neat when you look at it through that lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
my speculation, but
no, I grew up Catholic, so
me
I
too.
I vibe with that interpretation as well. I didn't renew
Yeah.
after the free trial, but
I
I
like
got
that.
out. I got out before confirmation. I remember in
Yeah.
grade 7, even then I was like, this is a soul contract they're asking me to sign, and there's
Yeah.
no way I'm going to hold up my end of this bargain. I'm not going to church
Yeah.
every Sunday. Come on.
Yeah.
So I knew I wasn't going to do it, so I didn't sign the contract, and I got out. And um, I mean, I ended up partying a lot after that, and didn't have some very good times. But I don't know that those two things were related. I think it was more because I found rock and roll. But and all the things that go with it.
I think that's an important journey though, and you have that good foundation, because I was raised Catholic. I was older when I walked out, I was about 19 or 20 after a friend of mine was killed. But
Uh-huh.
I remember being in church and listening to the Nicaea Creed and everybody in there. And I'm not, again, if religion is your path, I mean no disrespect. This was just my experience. And everybody's just saying it in a monotone, like, we believe in one God, the Father Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth, all that. And I'm just sitting there going, wow, they sound like robots in here. Like, do they even understand? Does anybody understand what we're saying? Or are we just reciting something? And what is that doing? Where is that going?
Yeah.
So that's when I really started to question things because it was just this kind of blind, let me just recite the words with no meaning to it.
Yeah.
And then I stepped out of it and I was like, oh my gosh, once I was able to let go of I'm such a sinner, the sense of freedom I had was incredible. Like, oh, I can do these things and not feel bad about it. And it was a great experience.
Right on. Yeah. No, it's funny. Like, and again, I don't have anything against religion either. It's
Yeah,
fun. I haven't dove deep into too many religions, but the amount that I've seen is kind of like, look, we're all saying the same thing here, and it is that
yeah,
unity consciousness. Love one another, and just go out and raise the vibes. That's kind of
right.
what all of them are saying is
Yeah.
the right path. At the kind of most basic thing.
It is, and
So
it's a tool. It's a tool to help people
yeah,
understand, I think, a greater concept. And just like going through school, some of us go get our doctorate, and some of us are good, dropping out of high school. It
yeah.
depends on, kind of what your journey is. And
Mm.
so I think religion is a great starting point for people that are going on a path of spirituality. And for some
Yeah,
people, that's good enough. That's where they're going to stop. And for others, we're like, well, we want to take the advanced course and see what else we can find out there.
yeah.
Um, and it's funny how I denounced religion. I was so mad at it. And then years later, I circle back to it. I'm like, oh, now I see the
That's
value
how I feel
in
too.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you come back to
Yeah.
it just from a different lens, a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And then we
funny.
end up, picking up, this crazy skill called remote viewing, during a pandemic. And now you find yourself teaching intuition on the internet. Who would have thought years ago
Yeah.
that
It's
this would have
uh
been
it's not that surprising really when I look over back over the rest of my
right,
life. Like
right,
I've always been creating things, doing music and stuff, and I've always been kind of I started with punk rock and stuff, so I've always been kind of anti-establishment, and
right.
into the alternative thinking, and if it's y- conspiracies pulled me in at like the age of 16, and never let
Yeah,
go. I
yeah.
have a much more healthy relationship with that kind of information now than I used to, but
Hmm.
I certainly feel now pretty vindicated that my intuition was on the right track back then,
Yeah.
especially with all the stuff that's coming out with the UFOs and everything now. It's like, oh,
You
I was
know,
interested in this for the right reasons.
it's funny when I was a kid, I went the opposite direction to you. I went into the government, but I remember being in high school and trying to figure out what I want to do. And I watched my first episode of the X-Files ever. I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. So, I
That's
joined the
fair.
military, I
Yeah.
got involved in intelligence, and I was working my way. I went through like the FBI's interview and stuff, and when I was in the police
Nice.
academy, and I was on that path, and then I went in a different direction, got into education, and now I find myself working with remote viewers, exploring UFOs and the woo. It's like, oh, I'm doing it anyway, right? Just not
Yeah.
in the FBI. I'm still
X-Files on the
exploring.
side.
Yeah, right. Teacher by day,
Yeah.
X-Files, and you know. But it's
That's
neat how it
awesome.
had that influence, and we all come out kind of back to where we
Yeah, that
started.
was another one of those shows that just completely like sent me on the journey too. Like
Yeah,
my dad was into it too, so it was like a family thing. My dad,
yeah,
mom, and me and my brothers and stuff would all. I think yeah, my sister eventually when she was old enough, it became a whole family thing to
yeah.
on Sunday nights to watch the X-Files. And anyway, yeah, no, great show.
I wonder. I mean, we talk about creativity. I was talking with somebody. I can't remember who I had on. I think it was Tobias last week. We were talking about The Simpsons. Oh no, I can't remember who said it, so my
Oh
apologies.
yeah,
But somebody was talking about The Simpsons and saying, I think it was Naeem. Just our creativity in general sometimes and the way we access information as remote viewing, they may not be intentionally going out
yeah,
to find the future. That just might be the creative process, right? And they're tapping into things
oh
and they're
yeah.
so locked into that signal. We talk about doing world events, right? They're so locked into society and what's going
Yeah.
on and all that
There
data that they're just filtering it and predicting it with
it's so
accuracy.
funny that you're saying that because I actually have a video in my course where I talk about the Simpsons phenomenon, and that's
Oh,
exactly
wow.
what I say too. Because it's 100%. I think that is what's happening. Because
Yeah.
every good song I've ever written has been a channeling process. Like
Yeah.
it's flowing through in the same, and I feel it now. I understand it now
Yeah.
that the way that songs flow into me is the same way that remote viewing data flows, and
Yeah.
it's 100% the same thing. So
Yep.
when you've got somebody who's in a creative state, your brain is going down into alpha and theta,
Yes.
and you're getting that you're getting that flow state, you're getting that um signal enhancement, I guess,
Yeah.
that comes with being in those states. And
Uh-huh.
especially with like a writing team like that, it kind of
Yep.
goes back to what we were saying before, where you've got a
Yeah.
team of creative people, you're all going to be grabbing stuff, and guaranteed, that like that is their whole point is of as a show is to make fun of reality. So they're going to obviously pull from source material that resonates with their audience, right? So real
Hmm.
stuff. So it makes total sense to me that that's what it is. Like so I don't know. I was gonna do a whole YouTube thing on that too. Actually, I probably
Yeah.
should now.
Yeah, you should. It'd make a great segment to go through. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the feeling is it's the same sensation that you're getting in your mind and in your body. I know as a writer, I go through the same thing.
You must
I
get it for
will I
writing.
will
Yeah,
feel the whole book. I'll feel it. It could be a 300 to 500 page book. The whole thing is there, and I just have to extract it and pull it out. And there's been times where like I'll write a chapter and then I'll lose it. Like I'll lose the file will become corrupted. So I'll have to recreate it. I'll recreate the chapter, and then later I'm able to recover the original file, and it's almost word for word. And my memory
yeah,
sucks. Like I write
yeah.
everything down.
Mine isn't great
Um,
either.
yeah, so
I've done
to
lots of
get
things to earn that, but yeah,
it's
it's
it's an amazing thing.
that's so cool, man. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the other implications of all this stuff being, quote unquote real, right? Is that
Yeah.
information just exists like out there, like you can't ever
Hmm.
create or destroy it. It's like energy, it's just always there somewhere, and you can
Yeah.
access it whenever you want because it's part of you, because it's part of everything.
Right.
But
So
yeah.
I want to jump back to the X-Files for a minute, or just shows like that in general, and this creative process, and then the grand conspiracy of things, right? In your opinion, do you think there was a purpose behind that show, whether it was a man-made, sinister conspiracy purpose or like this grander spiritual awakening purpose? Do you think there was something behind that show coming out when it did?
It feels more awakening y to me, like
Yeah.
and I'm biased as hell because I just love the show. So
Yeah.
and for me it was good. Like it was a great family bonding thing, and it
Yeah.
kind of opened me up to some of this stuff. Like I can talk to ghosts now and stuff. I never would have thought
Right.
that back then, but
Right.
it kind of set up my worldview in a way that I was able to have the framework to accept some of this stuff later,
Hmm.
I guess. And I mean, just
Yeah.
watching the show, it was like, I mean, I think I've always been somewhat clairvoyant. So it's
Hmm.
like, just as I watched the show, I just felt like, oh man, this feels real. Like there's
Yeah.
something to this, like something deeper here that
Yeah.
is I'm resonating with as I watch it. But and I mean, that's the great thing about all creativity and art is that it gives you that opportunity to resonate with and yeah, again, it's raising the vibes,
Yeah. It's a neat
creating stuff for people
experience.
to enjoy.
And I agree with you. I think it was something more like an awakening. Um, just in terms of opening your mind to what's possible, right? It brought a lot of people into ideas that they had never thought about before, things that you would think, oh my, like paradigm shifting things in a way that was safe and entertaining to go through as your mind's really opening up to new. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what books used to be and still are for people, but when
yeah,
that was the only
true, yeah,
form of entertainment, right? The book opens your mind. I love that as an author and as a writer, for people to have that experience and they get sucked into this world and they start to learn new things. I'm forever changed when I read a book
yeah,
or when
same,
I listen to a song, right? A song becomes a part of you. I can put on a song and it'll bring me right back 20 years to that moment, whatever that song resonates with. That's power.
totally.
I mean, that's really powerful.
Yeah, I love one thing I haven't been doing for a long time that I just kind of recently remembered I used to do is actually sit with a song that you want to listen to and like
Right.
listen to it.
Yeah.
Listen. Like headphones on, eyes closed, no other devices or any crap, and just like feel the song in your body, like what emotions and
Yeah.
stuff it elicits for you, and
Yeah.
what little journeys does it take you on. And man, it's like it's a super healing thing to do sometimes.
Yeah.
I was just in a really shitty mood the other day and I threw on some old song that I wrote with a friend and listened to it, and it was just like it took me back to that time. It's just
Yeah.
that, like you said, it was like, oh man, I feel like I'm back in the studio working on this again. And
Right.
like, and I don't listen to my own music a lot, but every so often I'll get one of my own songs in my head and be like, oh, I should probably
Yeah.
throw this on. and
Right.
and and
Right.
and it always has a message for me.
Yeah.
So
But when you think about it, I mean, you're taking that emotion that you have and you're interpreting that not with a pen and ideogram and AOLs, you're interpreting that into sound,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
you're literally putting emotional energy into a frequency that people can experience. And I think that's such an
yeah.
incredible art form to be able to do that.
Converting it, yeah. It
Yeah.
it feels that way. Like I've always said, or at least since I learned all this stuff, I've said that bass playing is channeling. Like when I'm on
Yeah.
stage, I am deep in a flow state within 3 minutes probably.
Yeah.
Which is why my band always starts with just a warm up jam. We just kind of freestyle while the crowd gets kind of realizing that we're starting and all that. And we always end up turning it into like a 10-minute awesome jam. And a lot of the
Yeah.
time we started rehearsals that way too. And a lot of the time we end up writing a new song right there. Like we just channel something
Yeah.
through and it's like, oh, well,
Because
that's
you're
a
in it.
song now.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I
Yeah.
was talking to Dick a couple weeks ago. And we were talking about how, we don't like being in crowds. We get anxiety because there's just so much
Oh,
energy that's
I've
coming
had that
in.
forever too.
But
Yeah.
but we said the difference is when you're at a concert with good music, everybody is harmonized with the
Yep.
same frequency, the same vibe, the same energy. And it makes a difference because you can really feel that energy in there as opposed to all the
Yeah.
chaos of like a subway station, right? Or a
Yeah,
crowded
yeah.
crowded
Put me
park.
on stage and I am an extrovert, but anywhere
Yeah.
else I'm just
Yeah.
like like the mall. I've never been able to do the mall.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
like
It's
torture.
it's too much.
Yeah.
What do you do to cope with that when you get that sensory overload, that sensory input that's too much for you? How do you
Um
deal?
breathing's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to use alcohol for that, but
Yeah.
that was a bad way to do things, so I don't do that
Right. Well, a
anymore.
lot of us do. A lot of us turn to, like, I understand why people turn to drugs and alcohol because
Oh yeah.
it sometimes it gives you a moment to just feel normal and regulated, right?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it
It
quiets all that chaos.
downshifts all the noise, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's and in the music industry too, I am seeing it getting better actually, but historically, certainly, and stereotypically, there's a lot of drugs and alcohol in the music industry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you grow up doing punk rock and heavy metal and stuff, and so you think, oh, okay, well and you look at your idols and they're all doing that, so that's
Right.
the road you go down, or a lot of people did, and the road that I went down too. Um, but yeah, COVID kind of changed that all up for me too. It was,
Right.
I kind of hit this point of health that was like really not great. I'd been working my way towards it for a decade or so,
Right.
but
Right.
and then yeah, I the first thing that happened at the start of COVID was I was like, well, this is the opportune time for me to get my shit together. I
Right.
need to start working out now because I feel awful and I got to do something about it. So,
Hmm.
um, the next day I got an ad on Facebook for like Chris Hemsworth's workout app or something for a 6 week
Right.
free trial. And I'm still using it now. And it,
Wow.
it, it was great. I ended up losing like 40 pounds and then I
Yeah.
then I shortly thereafter discovered remote viewing
Right.
and that was just the next level and it was, just been a crazy ride from there.
Isn't that neat how there's some points in your life where like I'm going to make this change. Changes that traditionally are very hard for people to make, but sometimes you just have the right, it just clicks and you're like, this is my new life right now,
Yeah, I
and
have
I'm
to do
this
it.
is just what
Yeah,
I'm
it
doing
just
and I'm
felt
going to
like the
stay
thing I
with it.
needed to do. Yeah.
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 And at this point I've got to the point where, I know that I need to exercise. Like I was avoiding it for years
Yeah.
and just out of laziness really, if I look back on it and I'm honest. But
Right.
it's uh it's critical now. Like if I'm in a crappy mood, it's almost always because I haven't exercised properly or
Yeah.
I need to do a meditation or something like that or get
Yeah.
outside away from my cave and into nature,
Yep.
something like that. So yeah, it's taking those little daily health things and making the right choice more often than you make the wrong choice, I guess.
And I think that comes down to intuition too, right? Because you're
Yeah.
listening to that voice inside of you where we have so many distractions in our day-to-day life
Oh
with our
yeah.
jobs, with everything going on in the world. And it's easy to just be, I'm so exhausted. I'm not going to listen to what my body's telling me I need because I'm so stressed right now. And I want to just either have a drink or go to sleep or put the TV on and veg out and forget about everything.
Yeah.
And then when you step back into those things that are valuable to you, you're like, man, I feel better right now. And it just took me 15 minutes to get back into this state. I should have done this,
Yeah.
5 days ago,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the little stuff that adds up, It's just
Yeah.
making little changes and getting into getting into better habits, It's and I mean I still screw it up sometimes too. I'm certainly not perfect.
We all do. But I think over time, like you said, I'm a huge proponent of a little bit every day adds up over,
Yeah.
over the course of a year, over the course of a month. It really adds up and you get better at those things. With meditation, I started with 5 minutes a day and I moved up to 10, 15, 20, and now do a full, hour and a half remote viewing session. But you start small and you do it every day and you start to look forward to it. It stops becoming stressful and it's something that you just build on and you get stronger at it.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure.
I want to shift gears for a minute. We were talking through email before, this conversation tonight. And you said you had a remote viewing session, which you alluded to
Yeah.
at the beginning. I'm curious to hear about it. You said it was an interesting topic of discussion for tonight.
Yeah, yeah. So and it's kind of on brand here because we've been talking about sort of the very personal nature of remote viewing and how
Yeah.
it's is and the interconnections between people and such. So I did this session with I've actually tried this 3 times. So I got one of the guys.
Mhm.
He is the publisher at a magazine called On the Bay Magazine, and so he is the guy that picks the cover for the magazine, and
Right.
I'm sure he does lots of other stuff that I don't really know about because I'm not a publisher. But anyway, he's got some creative control over the thing. So I've been trying to, and it's like a seasonal magazine. So every so often I'll get the inclination to just try and remote view what cover he's going to pick,
Right.
and he's like he's like not a disbeliever in this stuff. Like he's a pretty
Right.
spiritual guy too, and but he needs like more convincing than
Right.
some people perhaps. So the first couple times I tried to do it, I didn't have very good sessions, and I almost wonder if, this was going back years too. I almost wonder if maybe like neither of us were ready for me to nail it.
Right.
Um, but on this particular one, I got all the gestalts, I got all the high level data. I did not quite name the target, but I came close.
Right.
And then there was all this other really wild, like personal synchronistic stuff that came up, and a couple of weird, what I guess I would call a trick shot,
Right.
um, where I kind of redirected from the cover. I have some slides I can show,
Yeah.
if you're up for it. I'll try not
Yeah, I'd love
to
to see it.
drag it on too long
No,
because not everybody likes staring at remote viewing data.
that's okay. Well, I think
I,
everybody here does. So,
more here than other places, presumably.
yeah.
Yeah. Is that showing up there?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Cool
Yeah,
logo, by the way.
so my target. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually drew it by hand and then fed it into AI. So it
Okay.
wasn't a
Yeah.
completely AI generated thing. I tried to remote view it and I got this like Hamsa hand with a guitar on it and an eye in the middle, and it was like, oh, this is fun.
I
So
need to ask a clarifying. Did you try to remote view and you tried to identify a logo through remote viewing?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was more of a cowboy style session. Like I didn't really do a tasking.
Yeah.
I just kind of sat down and ideogrammed and then started doodling and got into the state, and it kind of came out on the paper. So and then I
That's
did a
pretty
few
cool.
iterations. I'm not much of a visual artist, but I used to
Yeah, me
draw a
neither.
lot when I was a kid. So
That's really
it's
cool.
fun to bust out sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the target was cool. So it was on the Bay magazine. I was after the cover, spring issue 2024, very specific about it. I knew it was coming out in April, and I
Right.
got the feeling to do this back in March. So I did the session on the 27th of March, and I got the feedback on the 9th of April. Um, the first thing that came up was Flower Pot Island, which is this that was my first AOL. I got mountains and water, which isn't really that uncommon for this magazine, so I kind of set it
Right.
aside. And then I did this ideogram. I got that this element was important. And I didn't actually notice this in the session, but this is my gestalt for plant life. It eventually showed up in the data, but
Yeah.
and then I kind of moved to S2 and got some general information. Gray is interesting because oops. Uh, the that comes back a few times, and the boat thing does too. But yeah, I kind of got onto this. I got this boat visual and kind of got stuck on that. And I was like, is this a vehicle? And then I got a mountain bike, and then this visual of like mountain bikers going through a forest. But I felt like I got really pulled into the forest. So I just kind of felt I was getting maybe a little off track. So I purged there, and then moved back to the cover. So I mean, I guess technically I'm a little front loaded in the sense that I knew I was going for the cover of this magazine,
Right.
but I don't know what it's going to be. So
But
it's,
that could be
you
that's
know,
like saying I'm going for world events, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah, right.
there's so many
Categorical front
possibilities
loading.
there. Right.
Yeah.
Which is yeah, I think that's fine.
So okay, so then I was like, move back to the cover so the image is clear. And I did another little ideogram, and there's my little plant thing again, and life, and this is usually mountains. And I tried labeling these, and the label end up not meaning anything, so it doesn't really matter. I was like, I'm going to do structure, and then my subconscious was like, no, you're not.
Nope.
So anyway, so we moved to X, so it's perceivable and clear. Did another ideogram. I do lots of ideograms. I love ideograms; they're fun.
Yeah.
Um, and and I did an S2, a nature brown kind of spring plants, gardening, plant life was now coming through pretty strong. Life among the hills feels like a location, perhaps in a valley. And then I got this Spy Cidery is this orchard that we have nearby, on Gray Road 2, I believe. And so I had an AOL of that and a strong visual of it. So I just wrote orchard, and I kind of drew this low-lying area at the bottom of a slope. And so what it ended up being was wild
Oh wow.
orchids,
Yeah.
which grow in a swamp, so at the bottom of a slope,
Uh-huh.
in the water. Later stage data, I had a lot of like furrowed soil with really moist soil and stuff. And anyway, so that was kind of cool. And it was called the Calypso orchid, and it's in the Bruce Gray swamp. So I
Oh,
got
there's the gray. Yeah.
yeah, so there was the gray. Um, and there was this other little thing in the corner, so I didn't actually notice that until I went and like grabbed a physical copy of it. And as I'm
Yeah.
looking at the physical copy, I saw this little boat thing. I was
Yeah,
like,
the
"Oh,
anchor.
that's interesting." And it says advertisement, see page 14. So I was like, "Okay, I'll go to page 14." And so this was the ad, and I was like, "Holy
Oh
crap.
wow.
A lot of my
Yeah.
other data makes sense." So
Yeah. You
I
pulled
had
it
this
in.
guy who I called
Oh,
Gray
there he
Gray
is.
Bruce was his name.
Yeah.
And he was a guy with short hair. I thought maybe it was gray, terrible writing. And I drew these kind of aviator shades, and he said
Yeah.
he felt like he's wearing something like a uniform or activewear. And he's actually wearing both because he's wearing a Blue Mountain uniform, which
Yeah.
is an activewear thing. So,
Yeah.
so I was really excited about that one. And I thought that was kind of a cool, that's what I called the trick shot, where I
Yeah.
got misdirected by this little advertisement into the middle of the magazine. So that was a cool one. There was also this I got this AOL in my band at this Heartwood Hall doing a show with a band called Roadwaves.
Right.
And there was actually an ad for our show in the magazine too, but I'm not counting that because I knew about it before.
You knew it was
So
coming.
yeah,
That's
so it
okay.
was
It's there.
kicking around in my subconscious. So then,
Yeah.
so then, yeah, so then the other side of the page on that ad, which was the actual ad it was pointing me to, was this boat and all these other sailboats and stuff.
Yeah.
So I had this, this and this propeller, this wind turbine AOL kept hitting me, and I think that's just
Hmm.
because it was trying to tell me it's a flower, you idiot, not a turbine. But
I say it looks
I
like the
didn't pick up
orchid.
on that. It does, yeah. And I didn't think orchid at the time because I guess boats are more interesting to me than flowers.
Yeah.
This boat in particular actually is a cool one, because bands play on it, and we've actually applied to
Oh
play
wow.
on this boat. So there's a personal resonance with that one too. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I even got the color of the boat, the blue. I mean, the water's kind of
Oh,
black
that's
here and
great.
stuff.
Yeah.
And there is sailboats here too, so that was on there. Um, and then the cover story was about this guy who looks not unlike me, could be an uncle or a cousin or something.
Right.
Famous guy, John Moyer, I think, a naturalist who founded the Sierra Club and all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess he found these flowers when he was camping here in like the 1800s. So there's this really cool story about this guy and his local travels and stuff, and how he called this flower like this perfectly spiritual creature and whatever. And so it's also called the Calypso orchid.
Uh-huh.
And this is our foster cat Calypso, who
Huh.
just had kitties, yeah, like 3 days
Ah,
ago.
look
So
at
I found
that.
that was another really neat personal synchronicity that just blew my
Yeah.
mind. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I took a break, and often when I take a break, I'll get a feeling to pull a tarot card or something when I come back. So I did that, and I got the Ace of Wands, which was interesting because my drummer had been wearing a shirt of a band called Ace of Wands like the previous
Huh.
night when we were jamming. So I thought that's kind of neat. And then
Yeah.
I looked up the meaning of it because I suck at tarot. I have to look at the book every time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's fun though, and I find it's almost always on point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the meaning of that one was springtime, divine guidance, fresh starts, so it's like okay, that fits. Yeah, and then I got more of the wet dirt, feels like a farmer's field, like a
Yeah.
view from the ground up. So in my stage four, I had like tall stuff, but really it was this kind of perspective thing.
Right.
Yeah, and then at the end of the story about that John Moyer guy, there was another ad for the party boat.
Yeah. Oh
So
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was it. And then yeah, just some stage four stuff. There was some other drawings of the
Right.
flowers, like a grouping
Right.
of them elsewhere, and splayed hand. This was me trying to break down the windmill AOL, and I didn't
Right.
again still didn't quite nail it, but you can't win them all, right?
No, but
But yeah, it was a
that's
fun
pretty cool.
session. And that was
Yeah.
another one of those ones where I was just mind blown, like at the so many different personal little synchronicities and things that popped up.
Yeah.
And I was joking with Dave, like his higher dimensional self was like plugging jokes and stuff into this cover for my higher dimensional self to remote view. Like the thing about the
It's highly
cats and all
possible, right?
that. Oh yeah, like
We just don't understand how it all works and where
it's
you
so
I mean
cool.
there's no time, right? Were you feeding his subconscious as you're getting the feed? Like where
Yeah,
which came
yeah.
first, right?
How's it going? Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
neat. Like it feels like you're almost kind of like peeking through the structure of reality
Yeah.
when you get feedback. Feedback is a buzz, man. Like, do you notice
Uh-huh.
that too? Like
Yeah.
when as you're going through a feedback on a session, that it's just
Yeah.
like I think
Yeah, it's
everybody
pretty.
must get that.
I do maybe about once a month I'll do just a personal session. I'm still playing. I've been doing this for about 2 or 3 years. I'm still playing with the wording of things, but sometimes it's just
Yeah.
like, what do I need to know? And
Yep.
I
That's a
go
good one.
back, like I'll go back 2 years and I'll look at like in my intent, it's like over the next 30 days. But when I step back and look at all the sessions I've done, I can see the whole storyline of things going on in my life that are spread out, some of the stuff I'm
That's
getting, you
crazy.
know, because I'm honing and I'm fine tuning, my connection with my present mind and my future consciousness. I call it, connecting with my future
Yeah, yeah.
consciousness. And it's neat. Um, Seeing the story that comes and then I'll get philosophical. My writer side comes out and I'll just write these
Of course.
crazy like philosophical statements that hold a lot of value to me. Or, is it remote viewing data? Is it just coming from me? I mean, it's supportive. It helps me, so I take it as valuable wherever it's coming from.
Yeah.
But it's been a neat process that
Yeah,
remote viewing lets
that's
me access.
that that's the trusting your intuition thing again. It's like I
Yeah.
get stuff like that too. It's like it's funny because I'll notice that my writing kind of changes when I'm
Uh-huh.
in that kind of state and I'm getting that, I guess, for lack of a better term or more scientific term, the spirit information.
Yeah.
Like that's what I call it when that kind of that stuff comes, like it feels different, right? Like
Yeah. It's
when
it's
you
a
get
great
those
feeling.
kind of, yeah. But
Angela
yeah.
Ford talks about that. I had her on the show a few times, and
Oh, nice.
she does automatic writing. And so she was saying how when she was, back at Stargate, she was doing a lot of the automatic writing, and she was catching some flack because, well, it's not the CRV that we're doing, but yet she's nailing it. She's finding these missing
Yeah.
people that nobody else is able to find, and she's going through the process. And at the end of the day, if you're studying RV and evaluating RV, then obviously stay within the structure.
Yeah,
But
for
if you have a
sure.
method that works, that's repeatable, that's still blind, okay,
Yeah.
go with it and use it. And the more people I speak with, who have a variety of different backgrounds, the more I'm really coming to accept that. I mean, future forecasting, everybody's got a different style there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that team is phenomenal with what they do.
That's a cool
So
thing about you guys, like to just as a viewer, like someone as like a person who watches the content. It's like
yeah,
really cool to see how everybody's style and how they pull in, and it's it's a cool way to present remote viewing information.
yeah, it's really cool, and I'm thankful to come through that way, being open to all these different things and seeing all these different approaches work.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I see a lot of the fighting and stuff on different forums and stuff, and I
Yeah.
just if it works, great. Just let it go. That's my opinion. I try not to get involved in, whose style is better because I think
Yeah.
everybody's mind works differently. So certain styles work better for different people's minds. And I think if we're following our intuition, it leads us to the style that works best for us, right now in our present moment. And 5 years from now, I may no longer be served by flow or CRV. I may be
Yeah.
moving towards something else like HRVG. So it really depends on where we are and what works for us, I think, to interpret data.
I almost see it like the the fighting and stuff between people about the different schools is very similar to like people arguing over like what genre of music is the best, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very personal thing to the person, but it's
Right.
all still music, you know.
Yeah.
It's if it's you know, you're going to play a jazz song or a funk song or a hip hop song, like, you know,
Right.
whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah, and does it benefit you? I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
biggest
That's a
thing,
great
right? Does
question.
does your does your RV style, does your RV practice, does it benefit you? Even if you're not getting, great accuracy all the time, are you growing? Are
Yeah.
you learning? Are you having an experience through that? I think there's such a deeper spiritual journey to remote viewing that goes beyond, oh, I got a hit, I sketched the thing. I'm so
Yeah,
bad at
totally.
sketching a structure. Like I can describe things going on around it. And like that's an area I'm working on is trying to sketch the structure.
Mm.
Um, but there's more to the experience than just being able to accurately draw the picture. I mean, it's
Oh,
important,
totally.
but it's fun, and that I'm not downplaying that. That's an amazing thrill, but I think there's that deeper spiritual piece that comes from it. So whatever works for you, I say, go with it, keep doing it,
Yeah. And I find
regardless.
like the more I or the less I care about my results
Yeah,
and how it's going, the more I end up tapping into that like spiritual
yeah,
side. Like with this session, I was just like off the cuff, let's try and remote view my buddy's
yeah,
magazine. Like and it ended up being this like surreal, super deep, meaningful thing for me, you know?
yeah.
It always that's one thing you can rely on remote viewing for is to surprise you. Oop, kind of lost connection here, I think. Uh-oh. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hmm. I guess it wasn't me.
All right, we had a technical difficulty, and I'm saying that now, so if my edit is sloppy, because probably not going to edit too much out of that, uh, you can understand what happened. But we were talking about remote viewing and different approaches, and if it works for you, then then go with it. I think it's a valuable thing. We were just joking
Yeah,
that because
totally.
we're talking psychic stuff, the internet just shut down on us, which
Yeah.
tends to happen sometimes. That electromagnetic field in superposition, right? It goes in and
Yeah.
interferes with our Wi-Fi.
Just freaked it out too much.
Yeah, we sure did. I'm curious, as part of your remote viewing practice, how often are you doing sessions? How often are you training that Jedi mind?
It depends because I do see other things as training. So
Yeah,
if I'm going to the studio and I'm playing with the band like for 2 or 3 hours, like that
right,
any creative process to me is kind of training that muscle.
right,
But I do try to do at least one kind of good session a week. And there are
yeah,
times like I'll do 30-day challenges a couple times a year where I'll try and just
right,
hit ARV every day for 30 days or
right,
try and do like I'll do the news thing or whatever. I haven't done that in one in a while, but
yeah,
yeah, it's just I try to almost again treat it like an exercise program kind of thing.
right,
And so as long as I'm getting kind of three things a week, like a remote viewing
yeah,
session and a jam and a gig playing a show or something, or
right,
a recording session and a remote viewing session and a gig or whatever, I try to I
right,
like the rule of threes. Same for the gym. I try to make sure I work out 3 days a week kind of thing too.
right, right.
But yeah, that's about where I go. But yeah, I definitely take breaks too, sometimes even for like a couple of
Yeah,
months, and get more. Everything ebbs and flows, right? Like in the
it
summer, I'll
does.
probably do less because I'm going to be playing festivals and stuff like that.
Right.
But recording an album.
Yeah. Oh, good for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we do have this natural ebb and flow, and even with the guys that do it full time, at Future Forecasting, Dick says it all the time. I mean, sometimes you're on and sometimes you're not, and
Yeah,
you'll have this peak and you're doing really, really good, and then you lose it, and then somebody else does really, really good until they lose it. So
yeah,
we don't understand why, but we have to be okay with like, okay, now I'm in a slump right now, so take some time off and then gradually get back in. I think that's the hard part sometimes because I had taken some time off and then I'm in this slump and then it's like, do I want to do another session and just find out that I missed it? You got to go through it. You got to go in and take the risk
yeah.
and put yourself out there again and just get through those bad sessions, and then you'll get back to
I'm
it.
almost I'm tempted to be really careful about how I talk about slumps too, because like as soon as you acknowledge that you're in a slump, then it's real.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's
Frozen
a very
again.
good point. Yeah, you make it real for yourself.
Oh man.
What what's your advice on getting out of those situations?
We froze again, I think.
You're freezing on my end too. Let me pause it here. All right, there we go. All
Yeah,
right,
talking about
choppy internet
slumps.
tonight. But yeah, talking about slumps, don't acknowledge that you're in a slump. But what's your recommendation for when you are in a slump that you're not acknowledging, how to get through it?
So yeah, so it's the question is like, what is the lesson here? I think
Yeah,
like for me at least, that's has been a helpful way to kind of push through it, and usually it's like and sometimes I don't even have to ask myself. Maybe I'll ask a buddy, and they'll be like, "Oh,
right.
here, you present my problem on remote viewer Discord," and somebody will be like, "Oh, you got too much ego on you." Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying too hard. You want the win too bad, or something like that, you
yeah,
know? So, but there's always a lesson, and if you kind of get quiet, and again, it's like tuning into that intuitive voice. You don't have to
right,
do a remote viewing session about it. Just do it in a meditation or whatever. Like
right.
ask
To get
yourself,
the
okay,
answer.
what's the cause of this slump? And sometimes it is
Yeah,
that you just need to take a break,
right. Yeah,
um,
it's too much. The muscle needs to
there's other
relax.
stuff you should be doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like you don't overtrain a physical muscle. Yeah.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. You do get fatigued. You need to give it that rest period of time. Let me
And
ask
then
you, do you
another.
find there's any drawbacks or dangers that we're talking about, getting fatigued? Any dangers from remote viewing? We were talking about, possibly bringing stuff back. I had Dick on a couple weeks ago. What are your thoughts on that? You ever encountered something that, could be dangerous to what you're doing? It's like we're frozen again. Or were you, no, you were just
Like
deep in
hitchhiker
thought.
type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a
No,
possibility.
well,
Yeah.
there was some freezing going on there too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it also could have like you freeze at the right moments, man. You look like you were just deep in thought, so I couldn't tell. Is he thinking or is he frozen here? But
It's a little bit of both, but yeah, I mean, I've had some weird kind of stuff. Certainly with the woo woo targets.
yeah,
Am I coming through okay here? Because you're
yeah,
you're
you're
moving in
good.
slow motion now.
Yeah, no, you're slow mo off and on, but no, you're good. I got you loud and clear. And then you just froze when I said that. Okay, we're good now.
Yep.
This is
Oh, that's
great.
hilarious. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna see if I can get some people kicked off some devices
I'm
so
gonna
I can.
pause us here. All right. Hopefully, no more interruptions with our bandwidth and our internet. We were talking about bringing stuff back, and I think you're about to
Here's
share
hoping.
a woo experience.
Oh my God.
You're frozen again. It's the woo.
Yeah, it's internet's being weird again still. It's maybe it's the
It does.
topic.
It
It's
doesn't
it
want you to
is
tell the
funny.
story.
We're bringing hitchhikers back right now, I guess. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what's going.
it's possible. It happens.
Yeah. No, I have had some weird stuff like this one of the early targets I did that I probably shouldn't have done was the Phoenix Lights.
Hmm.
And immediately upon my ideogram being done, I just got like this giant yellow eyeball with like
Hmm.
purple around it, like just creepy as hell. It felt like the Eye of Sauron upon me, kind
Wow.
of thing. And so it ended up being a pretty good session actually,
Right.
but it was a bit off-putting. So usually when something like that, like a jump scare type thing like that happens, I'll just take a
Yeah.
breather, take a break, some deep breaths,
Right.
Care Bear stare the energy away or whatever,
Right. Right.
and get back into it. But I've had some like certainly early on when I was going super hard and doing lots of gateway type stuff as well
Right.
as remote viewing. I would see orbs and stuff in my bedroom at 3 in the morning and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like there was a period of about a week where that happened like every
Hmm.
other night, and sometimes I try to talk to them and stuff, and it was like
Right.
again just in my head like telepathically, and
Yeah.
it was speaking in like these chimey noises, like musical noises, like
Yeah.
not
Tones and
words,
harmony.
and the tones kind of had emotional resonance to them. So it was a really cool kind of interesting experience, and I've seen this orb in the sky a few times since then too.
Yeah.
um Once after playing a show at a wedding, it was about 1:30 in the morning. We'd finished like the third set, and I went to get some food from the food truck, and just kind of went and hid off at the edge of the cliff, watched like looking out over the lake. because it seemed like a cool place to eat my fries.
Right.
And there was this row of lights, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's just the wind turbines over across the bay. But then there was one out over the water, and it was kind of the same color. It was like this orange, which is the same ones
Hmm.
that kind of showed up for me. And I kind of looked at it, and I felt like, oh, that's my buddy there. That's my little
Yeah.
orb friend. And it was
Yeah.
kind of blinking on and off, and then it just would like rapid fire blinking. And I was like, it's like trying to send me some subconscious light message or
Right.
something like that. Like I'm not into the new agey stuff particularly, but like
Right.
I mean maybe I'm moving that way after seeing some of this stuff,
Well,
you know.
again, we talked about
But
religion earlier, right?
I've
I think some
definitely had
truths.
some
Yeah.
experiences of um rem some of this stuff leading to some kind of woo-woo experiences in the real world. Um Another cool time was when I just I had this impression to go take the garbage out in on like
Right.
it was like November something, I think 2021. And um it was 11:11 p.m. of course.
Right.
I brought the garbage out, and there was this thing from my neighbor's house. It was like a diamond shaped, kind of clear. I kind of think it was more of like now, um, just like a spirit vehicle or something like that.
Yeah.
For a few reasons, but as I was looking at this thing, it had these different colors that were blinking, like different kind of chakra colors, and I asked myself, like, is this real? Like, am I really seeing this? And
Hmm.
as I asked that question, little orange orb came in like a meteor, except the meteor looped around the other thing and
Wow.
then disappeared. And it kind of the other thing stuck around, it kind of hung there for a minute. I tried to get my wife to come out and see it, but she wasn't really
Yeah.
interested in that.
Huh.
She was already in bed, so she didn't bother. And she's
Yeah.
been woken up by me getting woken up by stuff in the room, and she's like, "Oh, who's here now?"
Yeah.
So like it's so she didn't really care too much, but yeah, so what I found out later was that the neighbor whose house it was over
Hmm.
um became pregnant around the time that I saw that thing above their house, um, and
Interesting.
had a baby 9 months later. So I was kind of, I still don't know for sure, but I'm kind of wondering if I was almost witnessing like a soul getting ready to, or doing a scouting mission or something, or getting
Yeah.
ready to incarnate. It was a really weird thing, but one of the more interesting experiences
Yeah.
I've had, and the closest
That
thing
makes
I would say to a UFO type experience that I've
right.
had.
And it makes me wonder, because I have a friend who sees those things like on the regular, and she sees them fading in and out of, and is that something that's coming to see you because you've done remote viewing, or are you now open up and the veil's pierced, right? And you're able to catch glimpses of these things because
That's
you're
what I'm
tuned in,
thinking. Yeah, the
and
latter. Yeah.
you're starting to see these things now, and they're just always there.
Yeah, and this stuff coincides very much with when I've been doing like really heavy amounts of like, like remote viewing 30-day challenges or tons of
Yeah.
gateway meditations or stuff like that, or
Yeah.
long music sets, like 3 hours of
Yeah.
playing music and then go outside and
And there's
see
something
some
there.
weird stuff.
Yeah, because you're
But
piercing that. For me, it's interesting. I found it's been almost the opposite effect for me. I grew up having a lot of those. My experiences were much darker.
I
Waking up in
had
the
I had
middle of the
lots
night,
of
it's
those when I was
like,
younger too. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm not alone and you're scary. And then as I learned Reiki, as I learned remote viewing, I think I just gained a lot more control.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of those experiences
Yeah,
anymore
stuff
either.
doesn't bug me anymore. Like, and it's
Yeah,
important to, I think certainly for beginners, if there's any beginners watching this, to um, develop some kind of energetic protection
yeah.
type thing. Like I have these tuning forks and I love these. I'll just like
Hmm.
intentionally do this and just kind of move some energy around at the start of a
Yeah,
session, and create like the resonant energy bubble, I think they call it in Gateway. Just
right,
like an aura of protection, and or you can plug it into your intentions at the start of the session, like I
right.
am protected in my work, or there's tons of ways you can do it. It's important to do something. and
Yeah,
not nothing.
and that's really good advice. And I have discussions with a lot of different viewers about this. I know Edward and I have talked about things, and Edward's just like, no, my intention is nothing's going to mess with me.
Yeah.
And Daz is like, once I'm done the session, that's it. It's the end. It's cut off, and nothing's going to bother me. Dick has some shielding things that he talks about. I had Glenn Wheaton on the show, and he was, with HRVG, he was talking about, well, we don't really give those kind of targets out, and
Mm.
especially not to a beginner, somebody
Oh
who,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the reality. Beyond the woo consequences of it, you're experiencing something that could be scary, traumatic, foreign, paradigm shifting, and that's a lot. So if
Yeah.
you're a beginner, I'd say if you're a beginner, and especially if you don't have a background in woo, if you're
Yeah.
somebody who's like, this is interesting, I've never done anything psychic, I've never had a paranormal experience, get a good teacher and stick with, the targets that they're giving you, because when you start jumping into that stuff, it can really mess with your head and it can cause some significant challenges just because
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
rock your world.
Yeah. And so I mean, I think I dove into that earlier than I should have,
Yeah.
probably. But for me it was kind of okay because I'm already a musician and I've partied a lot and seen some things. And I
Right.
mean, I had ghost experiences when I was a kid that were actually probably more terrifying than anything I've done while remote viewing, even with the Eye of Sauron and all that. Like
Yeah.
we grew up on a street with a church on it, which in Canada means that it was stolen indigenous land,
Mm,
that they then built on. So, and we slept in the basement, me and my brother, and we both had this experience of these shadow beings. Like we'd wake up in the middle of the night and see them in the corner of the room, and they'd lunge at us, and
yeah.
just you get the sleep
Yep.
paralysis thing, and
Mm-hmm.
and so we both had that experience sleeping in that basement, but we didn't actually tell each other that it had happened until many years later. So it was
Wow.
weird. Like it was so yeah. And then I mean we've got psychics in the family and stuff. So it's all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is relatively not
It's not
not
shocking to
too
hear, to
weird.
have an experience. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, this is my wheelhouse. I've experienced this since I was a kid. That's
Yeah.
interesting point about those churches though on that stolen land. I remember watching a guy years ago. He was an Aztec descendant, and he was talking about how they took the land, they built the churches on there, and he says, and then they wanted us to convert to Christianity, and we looked
Hmm.
at all the symbols they were using, and they were the same symbols that we use. They just interpreted them different. So we can do that. We can, and we're really worshiping the same thing. And he talked about how the yin yang also was a
That's
symbol that
awesome.
they had with the positive and the negative, and he recognized the commonalities, his ancestors did.
Oh,
And
right
then we
on.
had a guy years ago. I can't remember his name right now, but he was talking about the technology behind the ancestor mounds and how there's
Oh
some
yeah.
kind of spirit technology that then again the conquistadors were building on and people were building on to capture that energy and that power from
Mm,
that stuff. You know.
yeah. No, I mean it's fascinating stuff. Like
Hmm.
I was even watching like this Netflix show the other day, one of the new kind of unsolved mystery type ones, and
Hmm.
there's this scene where they're talking about a ghost, and the guy had actually captured this ghost saying to him, "I hate you." And
Right.
I immediately asked, "Oh, well, why does this ghost hate the guy?" And then I got
Yeah.
the feeling that I get when I'm talking to ghosts, and I got my answer. And
Yeah.
the answer was this guy was a tourist who was staying in this haunted house to basically laugh at their pain,
Yeah.
to be entertained by the pain of these spirits who are bound to the world, or that was
Yeah.
kind of the gist of the message. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because like you can connect to anything really.
Yeah.
That's once you've trained in remote viewing and stuff, it becomes more easy to just kind of do that. That's what like I don't know if you follow the remote viewing Discord at all, but a
Off and
couple
on, I
buddies
do.
on there
Yeah.
do the cowboy style RV
Yeah. They were
where.
on. They were on here. We had a great
Oh,
conversation.
nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the cowboy style where you just connect quick to stuff. It's like,
Hmm.
um, it's you can do it, but you got to develop that trust in your own skill
Yeah.
before you can do anything useful
It's
with it, I
not
think.
something you start with. You don't start out doing
No.
cowboy. You have to develop as a remote viewer and an intuitive to then,
Yeah.
have those different experiences and tradecraft to hone in on
Yeah.
and use for cowboy to get that quick data too.
You got to
Uh,
learn the scales and the chords before you can play Led Zeppelin.
yeah, yeah, I'm not a musician, but I understand what you're saying. Absolutely.
Hmm.
It correlates definitely. Yeah, it's neat to be able to tap into those different skills and use them. I know we've been going on for a little bit, just a few more questions, but
Yeah, man.
how do you use these just in your everyday, besides being creative, just your day-to-day life? Do you find that you rely on these
Yeah, it's
skills here?
I mean, I do a lot of dosing, like and certainly when I was first getting into this, I did decisional dosing for literally everything I did. Just
Okay.
to like play with it and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I use the dosing kind of thing. That's more of an energy thing. It's like, do I feel it in the heart, or I'll send energy to the palms and it's like right hand is yes, left hand is no. I'll use that for like stocks and crypto and stuff too.
Really?
I'll use ideograms for investment decisions, similar to how Daz the style Daz does for with you guys.
Yeah.
And well, I guess you guys all do very similar, but with the ideogram style. But yeah, so not as much with that as just kind of in my everyday interactions with work and stuff. Like my day
Hmm.
job is basically like Sim City in real life. Like I'm
Hmm.
planning out infrastructure for
Right.
municipalities and stuff. So it is a bit of a future forecasting exercise, really. I'm
Yeah.
using engineering techniques to do it, but I'm supplementing that with my intuition.
Yeah.
And like it's really good for learning stuff quickly. Like we were doing this music video, and I went out to my editor's place. I'd never used his software before, but he kind of sat me in the chair and was like, it was kind of at this point where I had all these kind of nitpicky edits that I wanted because I saw them in my head. And
Right.
he was like, "Yeah, just come over and we'll chat about it." I was like, "All right, that'd be an easier way to do it." So I sat down at his desk with this software that I'd never used before, and I just kind of felt into it. And I mean, it's kind of like if you've used any video software, it's you're they're not all that different. It's like going over to your buddy's place and you have a Nintendo and he has a Sega or something when you were
Right.
kids. But that kind of thing. So, but I sat down at this software that I'd never used before, and it was like I'd been using it the whole time.
Yeah.
and
It's like you
and
just
and
knew.
I figured out how to do green screen in like a very short period of time.
Right.
Google searches is another one. I think like, okay, what's the optimal Google search to get exactly what I need the first
Mm.
time? And the words
Yeah.
come in and I type them and boom, I get it. And it's always
Yeah.
right.
It's
Little
really
stuff.
just
Yeah.
trusting that inner voice and knowing how to cue it.
Yeah. 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 Queuing is important too.
Hmm.
Another one I really like is just like, shadow work and trying to eliminate limiting beliefs and all that kind of stuff. That's another use. I guess that's not so much using it in regular life, but
Well, I mean, but
it
shadow work
enhances
is a
regular
part of our
life.
life, And do you have a specific technique that you use with your shadow work or anything in particular?
Um, Sometimes I'll write songs. Sometimes, like historically, that's what I always did.
Yeah.
Nowadays I'll kind of, it's more of a meditation thing. I'll kind of go in
Hmm.
and I'll ask questions and I'll
Yeah.
jot things down and whatever answers I get and I really like going for walks too. Just going for
Yeah.
walks and letting the flow happen because
Hmm.
locomotion gets you in that kind of state.
Yeah.
I know Josh Floto from the Cowboy Clan. He does his cowboy sessions while he's driving, and he
Yeah.
nails it. He did a really cool one for me the other day with I was trying to so I guess this is another practical life one, but I was trying to figure out what was wrong with my bass amp because it had this really
Yeah.
low volume issue, and my own kind of inkling was like, oh, it's probably just a burned out tube or something. Um, so I wrote this tasking, and in the tasking I made sure to say ignore any tasker bias on this.
Right.
And so I sent it to him to try, and he did his cowboy thing, and he nailed it. Like he was like, "Ah, it's a
Wow.
device that's used." And I mean, I'm probably just saying this because I know you're a musician, but it seems like a device that's in between you and an instrument, and it accepts signal, and it does something to that signal. But the issue is that the signal is not getting changed by this box.
Yeah.
And he drew some stuff that looks very much like the inside of my amp. I've got it in at the shop
Right.
now, and I'm waiting to see how it shakes out. But
Yeah.
so fixing bass amps may soon be a practical
I,
use in my
I think
life.
he's used it on his car. I mean, when he was having car issues, I think he was
Oh
sharing
yeah.
with me.
He said he's done
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 of these troubleshooting kind of targets and
Yeah.
had success with it, which
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, like, why wouldn't you be able to use it for that?
It's interesting when I'll be driving, I do Reiki and I'll be driving to a client's house and I do the same thing in my car. I start my process because I don't want to sit in
Mm,
their house as I get there and then like try to go through. So I'll just be driving and I'll start connecting and I'll start getting data as I'm driving. And I attribute it to remote viewing and how I practice remote viewing to how I'm able to tap in and understand how data flows now. And I'll
yeah,
start getting information or when I connect with somebody, through the camera here 5, 10 minutes before the session, I'll start writing things down and they
nice.
pop on. I'm just meeting them. I'm like, do you have this going on? Do you have this going on? Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's what's happening. And just that quick cowboy technique just
Yeah.
to pull stuff in. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, there's something about locomotion like that. I got a big road trip coming up, so I'm excited to
Yeah,
do some psychic shit on my road trip.
awesome. Yeah, record that journey. I'll make some good content for you
Yeah,
too.
true. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
some cool places. I'm going to see Muscle Shoals Studio
Hmm.
um, down in I think Alabama, and yeah, Nashville, New
Yeah.
Orleans, and a
A lot
couple
of
of cool
music
places.
history there. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah, I'm
awesome.
excited to just kind of wander around and feel stuff out. Like
Yeah.
it'll be a fun mission.
There's a lot of stuff to feel down there, I'm sure too. So
Oh,
that'll be
no
really
doubt.
neat for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's awesome.
gonna be vibey.
Josh, it's been an awesome conversation. I've learned a
Yeah, man.
lot. Love hearing about your process and your experiences. One more time, you want to give your website, for your promote what you're doing here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on rockstarintuition.com is my remote viewing world stuff. And I've also got a banjo funk comedy band called Glacial Erratic.
Oh,
And we're doing some pretty cool stuff these days. We just put out a video. We got an album coming out in probably around the end of the year once we get through festival season. Um, and yeah, our goal as a band is to use our psychic powers to raise the vibe and have a good time doing it.
wow.
So
Like we talked about putting
it's a
emotion
fun
into it,
mission.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
that's really cool. Well, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out too. I didn't find that yet, so I'll check that out.
Right
And
on, man.
just as a recap, I mean, you're working with people to learn, as a teacher to teach intuition and learn how to hone those skills a little bit better. You
Yeah.
and I'm jumping back now. You're recently certified as a teacher or an intuition teacher. Isn't that what your website
Yeah,
said?
yeah. So I did a certification at a place called the Atmana Academy down in
Hmm.
Florida. Heather Alice Shea is she runs it. She's like a former student of Dolores Cannon. And she's
Wow.
been teaching intuitive life coaches for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And I again, it was one of those things where, the student finds the teacher when the timing is right. And
Yeah.
I found some quiz on Facebook, and I never ever take Facebook quizzes or any of that
Right.
stuff. But this particular one, it was like, "What's your intuitive archetype?" And I was like, "All right, I'll click that."
Hmm. Yeah.
And it led me down the funnel, and I've made a lot of good friends at that school. Actually, it's great. It's a
Yeah.
really cool program.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I got a teaching certification through them, so I actually have sort of a high ticket client type thing where I teach one on one
Hmm.
using their methodology as well. But I'm not quite advertising that one yet. I'm still building that one out
Still
to
building
the
that.
point where I'm ready to to
Yeah.
to. I want to make sure that I'm giving my students everything that they
Yep.
deserve, right? So
Now I go through the same thing as I roll out new trainings and programs too. You
yeah,
want to make sure it's
gotta
quality
be
and
careful.
they're going to get value and you're not just making it up as you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
awesome. Well, cool. I look forward to future developments, man. Hopefully we can connect again, have you back on the show
Yeah.
and talk
No,
about
this has
new
been
stuff.
awesome. Thanks
So,
for having me, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah, happy to have you on here. And for those of you that are watching here, definitely check out Josh's website and let us know your thoughts on. We covered a wide range of things, your experiences
Yeah.
too with remote viewing, spirituality, how it ties into the big picture, and creativity. I think we touched on a lot of things. And for our new viewers out here, you can find us at the futureforecastinggroup.com. That's futureforecastinggroup.com, and you can see all the work that our remote viewers are doing, looking at world events, looking at cryptocurrency, looking at the woo-woo and the mystery targets, and so much more. So check us out, futureforecastinggroup.com. Josh, thank you for being on the show and for being my guest. And on behalf of the Future
Anytime, dude.
Forecasting Group, I'm Dennis Nappy II. Thanks for watching.